I'd like to introduce to you a new component called imageFSC, Image Flow Screen Component. And what it allows you to do is place images on flow screens. This is a normal flow screen. You can see next previous button, the new pause button is here. And what we got here are a couple images. And let's take a look at how they got there. If we look over here, you can see that these images are Lightning components, which means that I basically dragged them in as extensions like this, and then I selected from this list. In order to get my imageFSC to show up here, I had to install it, and it's over at flowcentral.net, an unofficial repository of components that you can install. And if we look at what's in here, you'll see that there's only a single attribute right here. It's called static resource name, and it's set to Oktoberfest promos. So, what is a static resource? Well, a static resource is an image or video or file of some sort that's been uploaded into Salesforce and stored for use by Salesforce apps. And there's a section in setup called static resources, and I've gone here, and you can see that if we kind of look at what was recently modified a few days ago, here's my Oktoberfest promos. So I uploaded it by clicking new right there, and here I have it, and you can see that here's that header bar right here, and it can be used just by reference, and that's how we've got this going on here. And so this is an interesting start. Let's see what else we can do with these. In this case, what I've done is I've given size directives to this second image, and you'll see that by making it smaller, I also cause it to responsively wrap. So what's going on there? Well, this width and the height are being set right here. And you can see that I've set it to be 300 pixels, 400 pixels. That's not the exact dimension, and it's getting a little warped, but I mainly wanted to show what was possible here. And you can see that there are a great number of styling attributes that I've baked into this component. A lot of stuff you can have fun with. And so why is it floating up like that, and how do you prevent it from doing this if you don't want it to do this? The answer is that the image component by default treats its image as a span, which means that it tries to blend in and fit in with the rest of the content. Now, there is a way that you can say, you know what, I don't want that. I want things to be a little more fixed in place. And so if we go to the next page, you can see here that we've got a nice centered aspect. And what's going on here is we've told the components that we want each of them to take up all the width from left to right themselves. And so they're not sharing, and that's why they're not wrapping. So if we go and we look, you can see that the way that's done is by setting an attribute called style display as block to true. So that's what in the language of web design, it's called a block when you're from all the way from the left to the right. We set that to true, and then we set the margins to auto. And when you set it to auto, you're basically saying, browser, you decide. You do the best you can. And the browser interprets that by saying, well, if I can't share, if nothing else can share this row, it's just going to be this image, and I set the margins, I better make them equal on both sides. So this is how you center stuff. You set margin to auto, and you make sure that it's being displayed as a block, which in this case requires this right here. So if we go on, we can see that you can combine these. So here we've got a couple of inline images, and we've got an image here that's as a block, and that's all pretty well and good. Now here, what we're doing is we're starting to get a little fancier with our capabilities of display. If you remember, when we tried to specify those 300, 400, that 300, 400 pixel dimension, you see how it's a little warped? I didn't quite get the right dimension. What I did here was I resized these and kept them proportional. And that is essentially just another thing that you can do with these styling directives. So if we look here, what I've done, let's take a look at this. Here's where I'm reading in the static resource, so it knows what image to pull out of Salesforce's cold storage. And here's where I'm saying not to mix it on the same line as anything else. And here's where I'm saying let's center that. So here are the 4 new ones. What I'm basically doing is I'm saying to the browser, you figure out the width and the height yourself, but don't let either of those dimensions get beyond 300 pixels. And so what it did was it kind of said, well, the width is the longer of the 2 dimensions. So I'll set that to 300 pixels and keep it all proportional. And if we look at this one, this bigger one is exactly the same, except the max is set to 600 pixels. So we're using style max height, max width, width, and height. So some more graphics tools there. Now let's take a look. I don't know if you noticed it, but there's something different about the banner, the header on top. I don't know if you noticed it looks better in some subtle ways. Let me go back, and you can compare the two. You notice how it's gotten a border, and if we zoom in, you'll see that the border, it has some little rounded quarters here, and we've set the color to a dark gray. And what we're doing there is taking advantage of more effects that are baked into the image component. That's not it. Let's take another look at this. So here, once again, we've named the image we want. We've told the browser to center it and to make sure that nothing else shares the row with it. And now we're getting into some new ones. These are border attributes. So we're setting the border to a sort of web hex code here, and we're setting its width to 1 pixel, and we're setting the style to solid, and we're setting padding overall to 5 pixels, and we're giving it a border radius of 4. And this is the resulting effect. I want to show you something kind of cool. We could fiddle with this and experiment and go, kind of cycle back and forth, but there's some easier ways to do it. You can go figure out how to get into your browser's console area, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, and here, so this is where all that stuff we specified, like 5 pixels and DDD, this is where it eventually ended up when Flow converted it to HTML. But down here is the really interesting stuff. You can actually play with this stuff. So you can see all the style, because I've selected this right here, you can see that it's all represented here. And if I change it here, let's change this to 5. Look what happened to that border. And I can go here to color, and you'll notice that there's a whole set of web standards that you can use right like that. And then let's go for this border radius because it's hardly noticeable. Let's make it a much more substantial 50 pixels. I like the looks of that. So I don't like this little border, this little butting in right here. And so what I want to do is I want to create some bottom margin for my nice banner. So let's basically switch from completely automatic, and you can see that we lost our centering. So I'm going to go here and actually put automatic back for right left. That's not quite it. All right, and then for bottom, I'm going to give myself 5 pixels. And that looks pretty good. Now let's make it 10 pixels. All right, so now I've got, so you can see it was very easy and fast to play with my layout options. Now, this never gets saved. The moment I reload or click this next button, this stuff will be lost forever. So what you have to do is you have to bring it over here and copy it into your flow and save it. But it's a particularly effective way to do some cool things. So that's pretty good. Let me show you a few more exciting things about these images. You'll see that I've got next and back, not in the traditional way. I've turned off the footer and I'm using next and back buttons. And these are more image components. They're just like the image components that we've been looking at, but they take advantage of another feature that this image component has, which is called destination navigation. And it uses a technology called Lightning Navigation, which is brand new and is very exciting. And essentially, what we're doing with Next is we're taking advantage of some functionality we added recently to Flow that lets you control the flow's forward and backward action. And we've baked that functionality into this image component. So you can take any image component and you can set the destination flow transition to next or back or finish or even pause. And when you click on the image, it will do that. And that's exactly what we have going on here. So we have next and back working really well. But that isn't the only way you can navigate. I mentioned Lightning Navigation, and Lightning Navigation has a lot of very cool features. So when I click on the left image, let's take a look at how that's set up. So I've got that set up to go to a web URL. So it's destination web URL. I've set salesforce.com, and when I click here, you can see it loads any URL into another tab. The flow is actually still here. So that's one thing you can do. Now on the right image, whoops, what I've done is I have set dest record ID. So I have set a specific record ID. Here I've hard-coded it, but obviously in Flow, you usually are going to pass it in from upstream in the flow. So I've got a contact ID here, and basically when I set dest record ID, I'm saying that whenever this gets clicked on, finish the flow and go to that contact. So let's watch this. So we've loaded the contact right in console mode. It actually keeps the flow over here so you can continue to manipulate it, but it brought up the contact right here. And there are a few more navigational directions you can go. On the left here, what I've specified is I've said I want to go to the contact page, and I want to look at the list view, and I want to look at the specific view called Alex List. So when I click here, you can see it went straight to a particular list view. A couple caveats about the navigation functionality. It pretty much only works in Lightning. And not only that, but it's based on events that won't work properly if you run it from the setup environment. If you run it in run or debug, you will not get those navigation capabilities. So that is a Lightning only capability there. However, the image styling that was in the first part of this video should be fully available to flows that are running in Visualforce in Classic, and I encourage you to take advantage of it, whether you're on Classic or Lightning. and hope that you get some good use out of this new component. Thank you very much.